Yeah, make knives. Knives are super important. They're like the foundational bedrock of being a cook, of working in kitchens. It's one of the simplest skills, yet it's also some of the most important. And today, I'm gonna show you how to use them, how to sharpen them, how to cut basic things, dicing, making strips, cutting big chunks for stews and sauces and all that sort of stuff. I'm gonna go through it all, and it all starts with one of these. This is an expensive knife. You do not need an expensive knife. You can use a cheap junk one. It really doesn't matter as long as it's sharp. And I'm going to show you how to make them sharp right about now. And here we go. This is a sharpening stone, aka a whetstone. The reason it's called a whetstone is because it needs to be wet. Go figure, and there's a good reason for that. It's, so it doesn't create a lot of just dried metal bits, because that's essentially what you're doing when you're sharpening a knife. You're taking a layer of metal off of these knives to make them sharp again. So yeah, wet the stone. You've got your two sides that you will see with the numbers. You've got your 1000 grit and your 6000 grit. You start 1000 grit, the lower number, and then you work your way up. You can get multiple sets of stones to do this like ultra perfect. This will do perfectly fine. You will get these super sharp with just this. I'm not going to use this knife. I would show you on this because it's like the perfect knife to do it, but these are brand new. So I'm using an old cheese knife, but honestly, it'll do the trick. You'll see anyway, it doesn't matter. Starting off with this, it's basically just, you line your tip up, or you can do it by the base. It really doesn't matter, but as long as you've got one long sweeping motion all the way down the blade, and it's just one long motion from base to tip, and you do that 10, 15 times, just keep doing it. It'll wear it down, it'll make it nice and sharp. And the angle you want is kind of 20-ish degrees. You don't want it super flat, because then you're just gonna create a big flat spot. But if you do it too narrow, it's not really gonna have much of an edge anyway. So sort of 20 degrees, and just pass it over. Now this is the, what I like to call the easy side. It's easy overall, but this is the easier side. Because when you come back, you have to sort of post it this way, and I find this a little bit awkward, but it's really fine. It's really not that hard, but honestly, super simple. Yeah, 10 times the side, just do it. You don't even have to really keep much of a crazy count. It'll honestly work, because you're gonna come back and then do the other side again. And then and you can see all that. This stone probably isn't wet enough, but that's what you get, this grittage, that metal sludge. That's pretty much how you know it's working. That's how you know you're getting the knife nice and sharp. And I probably should have done a before test on a piece of paper, like they do in the fancy videos. But honestly, this was blunt. It cut not much. It's a cheese knife, but it cut through cheese. But the harder cheeses, it was a bit of a struggle. So, just keep working it, get it there. It'll be nice and sharp. And once you've sort of done that, your certain amount of times, you'll feel it, once you've done it sort of 30 or 40 times a side, back and forth, it's ready to go, because this isn't even the final pass over. So you're gonna flip the thing over, put the higher grittage side on, nice and soft. And this is what you're finishing it on. This is it's honing the knife. That's what all it is now. It's not taking too much metal off, it's just honing it, smoothing it off, nice and easy. Once you are done with this, you're gonna have to rinse it off and wash it off, because basically, even though you sort of wipe it like that, there's still gonna be micro amounts of metal shavings kind of stuck on this. So rinse it out of the sink, give it a wipe with your cloth or your sponge, give it a proper rinse, and you'll be good to go. Knife this time, it is commonly called a chef's knife. You can get them in Woolworths for like $10, just a simple version. Like I said, these ones are expensive. These are really, really nice. You don't have to splurge that much. Honestly, I do, because I use these a lot and I love them. And if you do have the funds, or you can save up the funds to buy a decent set of knives, not just one, but a whole set, it's worth it. Honestly, it is worth it. But you don't have to make good food, and I'll show you that as we go along. So yeah, I'm dicing an onion. I've already cut it in half, sort of long ways, leaving the head and the root intact. They will be important. But you just sort of cut that head off. And I find this makes it easier to peel the onion, because you have to peel all this stupid stuff off. The worst part about cutting an onion And once you've peeled it off, you want to keep that root intact because that's going to hold the onion together when we do what we're about to do. So basically, you're going to make long sort of cuts down towards the root, but not all the way through. You want to sort of leave, that sort of just this little bit here. You want to leave that intact. So you're just going to slice it very nicely using your claw. And if you don't know what a claw is, it's what a lot of chefs use to protect their fingers. Basically, you cut with your knuckle out, not your fingers out. Because a lot of amateur cooks, a lot of home cooks, they cut like this. And it makes me nervous seeing it, but a lot of people are really careful and it doesn't matter. But if you want to avoid that, you do the claw. Basically, you hold you're using either your index finger or your middle finger, depends on what you like supporting more. And you're leaving your knuckle slightly out, this bottom knuckle slightly out, and you're pressing that against the knife and then you're cutting it with your sort of this flat part of the knife rubbing against your knuckle, or just away from it. And what this does is even if you miss, or you don't have to be so careful because you've got this barrier here. If you're doing like a big chop, you've got your risk of, the only real risk is you slice a bit of skin on your knuckle off. And compare that to chopping the tip of your finger off, big difference. Honestly, don't cut your fingers off. Do this instead, it's way smarter. But it's cumbersome at first to learn. It feels really strange. You're like, oh, it's claw, it feels really weird. But after a while, it feels totally natural. Just practice it, cut a heap of veggies, and you'll get used to it. It's the safest way to cut, and it's the best way to cut, in my opinion. So yeah, basically use your claw, cut down the center of the onion. Now, cutting nice, with a nice sharp knife, you can get these cuts nice and thin. And that's kind of what you want when you're dicing an onion, but it depends on what you want. If you want sort of bigger pieces because you want it to take longer to cook for stews and things like that, that's perfectly fine. Cut them a bit wider and then leave it like this and just cut straight down. But if you want a nice fine dice for like a nice sauce or something along those lines, you're gonna wanna cut sort of down this sort of center part of the onion. You can do 1, you can do 2 cuts down it. If you can fit it, you can even do 3. It all just depends on how much it makes the dice fine. But I like to do 2. So you cut down towards the same thing as the center of the root, but don't cut all the way through. And then after that, the hard part's done. You just turn it this way, and you just cut straight down. And sometimes the onion's gonna wanna sort of fight you, and the outer parts are gonna split and peel. Honestly, with a rough chop afterwards, you'll kind of fix that. Then once you get towards this sort of center part of the onion, you sort of turn it on the face of the root and just cut around, and you've got none of that tough root to sort of battle with. Benefits of using a sharp knife too is you'll cry less, because the reason you cry while cutting onions is because of all the vapors that kick off when you're kidding it. With a blunt knife, all it does is just kick them up and straight into your face. You'll still cry, don't get me wrong. However, this makes it way easier and way less tears. And yeah, like I said, just afterwards, if you want just a nice rough chop, if there's any sort of larger pieces, and pick at any random bits of skin that made it through. But yeah, that's a nice fine dice, and you chuck that in your sauce, and that'll do. That will work. It's perfectly fine. And now we're going to cover carrots. Carrots are kind of the long, sort of the tedious form of cutting things up. You'll see why in a sec. But to dice a carrot, you just cut. I find you don't have to cut these off. I just find them dry and they're a bit icky, And then you cut your root off, your base of the plant off, and then you cut it in half. This is a wonky shaped carrot, so you can sort of cut it where the wonk is, and then cut it in half. And then same thing here. Cut it in half. And then from here, it's basically just trying to cut it sort of length, like into multiple strips. So like that, cutting it into like sort of thin strips. Now, if you cut these super fine, like into matchsticks, that's called a julienne, and it's a very common way of cutting these up for, like salads and stuff like that. You can also just use a grater, honestly. A box grater for making shredded carrots is like the greatest thing of all time. It is honestly so easy. But it really doesn't matter. But once you get them into these, so I'll move these over. Once you get them into these sort of matchstick kind of things, you lay them out flat, and then you just cut down them, sort of like the onion, where you're cutting it long ways, and then you're cutting it against it to create these long pieces. Now, if you want the dice finer, like I said before, cut these in half again, and then in half again, depending on how big they are and how fine you want the dice. For what I'm working with, I'm just going to use this stuff to make like a sauce afterwards so it doesn't go to waste. This will be totally fine. Honestly, it'll work. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, you sort of get the gist. Capsicums, you sort of cut down and then you cut them across. It's all the same sort of thing. You're cutting anything into long strips, and then yet again against thing to create a dice. That's all you really want. Like that's dicing vegetables. It's pretty simple. It takes a bit of practice to get used to it with the knife skills. But if you continue to sort of practice your claw so you don't cut your fingers off, don't cut your fingers off, I'm serious. It's not fun. I cut the tip of this finger off when I was learning how to cook. It's not fun. Don't do it. Use the claw. I sort of, as I go along, you'll find that I'm very sort of blasé. You can kind of do whatever you want and get creative. That's kind of the fun of cooking. This, I'm not gonna budge on. Use the claw, learn how to do it. It's saved my fingers because I'm just a clumsy guy, you know. Claw, cut along it, very, very easy. Takes a little bit of practice and it's a bit cumbersome at first, but you'll get used to it. I believe in you. But that's all. That's knife skills. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.